Hello, and welcome to our webinar on addressing legal recruitment challenges in Canada. Your host today will be Randi, the CEO and founder of Life After Law, and will be accompanied by Michaela Krell, the National Director of Life After Law. We want to thank you for joining us today as we explore various topics and then open the floor to your questions. Without further ado, here's your host, Randi.
Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you for attending. My name is Randi, and I'm the founder and CEO of Life After Law. We are coming up on our 25th anniversary in business. We're a legal executive recruitment firm, and we place lawyers as well as other legal professionals into in-house, private practice, quasi-legal, and executive roles. We are a national company. We have offices across the country, and we work with a range of clients, from national law firms to small startup companies to large multinational corporations. We've been successful at developing solid long-term relationships with our clients and with our candidates. Our clients partner with us because not only are we able to meet their national legal recruitment needs by providing exceptional talent and always with a focus on the right cultural fit, but also we are their trusted advisors, providing valuable market insight and strategic planning and consulting. As with everyone at Life After Law, I'm a lawyer by background. I went to Osgoode Hall and I started out my career in criminal defense law. I very quickly discovered, though, that it wasn't for me, and I knew I needed to make a transition. So I started to explore my options, and I got my very first quasi-legal job. I was a contract manager at a large manufacturing company. Now, that was completely different than being a criminal lawyer, and I enjoyed it. But what it really did for me was open my eyes as to all the potential career possibilities out there for lawyers. So I then made a further transition to work with an HR consulting firm, and I learned about the world of recruitment. And from there, Life After Law was born. At its roots, Life After Law initially was created to address the needs of lawyers who are looking to work outside of traditional law firm practice, like I was. So the initial focus was on placing lawyers into quasi-legal, non-traditional, and executive type roles. Imagine this new source of talent was now being presented to hiring managers in so many industries. It was actually groundbreaking. At the time, as part of those non-traditional roles that we worked on, I would also include in-house counsel type roles as well. So unlike today, where it is a very typical career path for a lawyer to move in-house after a few years in private practice, when I look back at 25 years ago, that path was still not quite commonplace. It has increased more and more so over the years, and it has become a mainstay of our practice and our expertise. Now, what also came to light fairly early on was that not all lawyers who are looking to make a change were necessarily looking to leave private practice. The more we spoke to them, we realized maybe they just weren't in the right environment for them. Maybe they just needed to move to a different practice area. Possibly what they needed to do was even move across the street. So, in addition to the in house and executive roles, we have also worked with law firm clients for at least 20 years, placing both associates and partners, as well as working with them to fill their behind the scenes roles in law firm management. Because of all these different types of roles that we worked on and our strong focus on the skills of the individual and the transferable nature of those skills, we developed an excellent and a unique screening process. And over time, this unique recruitment lens has served us well in being able to identify a really good cultural fit for our clients, whether it be in-house, private practice, or in executive roles. So now I will turn this over to Michaela Krell, who will tell you a little bit about her non-traditional Life After Law career.
Thank you, Randi. Hi, everyone. My name, as Randi mentioned, is Michela, and I am National Director here at Life After Law. Like Randi, I am a lawyer by training and also went to law school at Osgoode Hall in Toronto after completing a BA in Honors Psychology at McGill University. Unlike Randi, being a lawyer was never something I dreamed about. I kind of happened upon it. I had friends writing the LSAT and jumped on the bandwagon, and I never really stopped to think about whether I actually wanted to be a lawyer or to learn what it entailed, but rather went through the motions. Although I really enjoyed learning in law school and the critical thinking aspect, I just knew it wasn't what I wanted to pursue in the long term. I did, however, think it was important after going through school to be qualified. So after completing my degree, I was called to both the Ontario and New York bars. I quickly, though, transitioned out of law after my articles and straight into legal recruitment. I spent a year in regional legal recruitment, primarily in the Toronto market, and then made the leap to international recruitment with a company that specialized in placing lawyers into law firms worldwide. Our clients were some of the largest law firms globally. Following a few years in international recruitment, I met Randi and joined Life After Law, and that was in 2010. And then after 3 years in the Toronto office, I relocated to Vancouver, where I'm from originally, to open the office here in Vancouver. And I've gained, being in both markets and doing the international recruitment, I've gained sort of a unique perspective on both the Vancouver and Western markets, but also can speak to the differences between the two and moving across the country to various jurisdictions within Canada. So that's a bit about Randy and I. And now that you know more about us, we can delve right into the pressing issues and innovative strategies in legal recruitment. Because a large part of our job entails speaking with lawyers, legal professionals, and those responsible for hiring lawyers and legal professionals, whether it's the head of a legal department, HR talent managers, or managing partners or firm owners. We do this day in and day out. We sort of are in this position of uncovering common trends, concerns, and issues which we see keep coming up as they relate to the legal market and to hiring legal talent in particular. So we've distilled these issues and concerns that keep coming up into 5 major themes that if you are someone who is hiring legal talent, you have most likely experienced. So we're here to help you tackle these concerns. And I will let Randi start with the first one.
So I just want to say at the outset here, we know that many organizations, firms, really anybody who's in a position to hire does ask at some point questions about using outside recruiters to help with this. The question comes up, why not just do it ourselves? It's always on people's minds. Is it possible to do it that way? Save money if we do it internally. So I assure you that we will address this. The webinar itself is really more focused, though, on the issues that come up within legal recruitment. However, it just so happens that using a recruitment firm tends to be one of the parts of the solution. So let's get started on one of the largest issues that we see coming up. And I have to say that one of the biggest issues that I see being faced within legal recruitment has to do with how an organization addresses its hiring needs. For the most part, I generally see organizations tend to do their hiring in more of a reactionary way, more as a reactive as opposed to a proactive approach to that, meaning somebody leaves the department, all of a sudden they're shorthanded, so they have to hire someone now. Things get busier, so they need to bring somebody on board. Reacting to a departure and only planning your hiring or not really planning your hiring, but just reacting when someone leaves, when there's a departure, it really puts a lot of pressure on an organization. And I would say the largest one ends up being timing, because when someone leaves unexpectedly, there's usually an urgent need to replace them. And when it happens, it needs to be done quickly, and it has to be just decided whose job is it to actually replace this person? How do I go about it? Do we have the capacity to do this search? And one of the things that actually comes up very, very frequently in this situation is that people find themselves in sort of a catch-22 situation. They're so busy, they desperately need to hire someone, but they're so busy, they don't have the time that they need to invest in hiring someone. And then in addition to the timing and the urgency required in this reactive scenario, the regular issues in recruitment that come up all the time are just more pronounced here. So coming up with finding the right people, actually attracting those right people, getting them interested in your organization, and actually getting them to accept an offer with your organization. So these issues come up no matter what, whether you are being proactive or reactive, but when you plan it in advance, when you're strategic about your hiring, you have much more time to deal with it. Make sure that you're finding the right people. So what I wanted to mention was we do have certain clients that we work with on a regular basis. And one of the great things is that they're really, really successful in their legal hiring because they've learned about being strategic. They are proactive in their hiring. So whether it's in a legal department in a company, whether it is within a practice group in a law firm, it doesn't really matter, but they're thinking about what is this going to look like? So strategically planning out their needs, looking at them on a regular basis, definitely looking at it annually, but thinking about things like what are our strengths? What do we have now that's working for us? Where maybe are we a little bit thin in some of our resources? Where's the business going? What does the future look like? And how does legal impact on that future? When are we going to need people? What is the growth plan? And another key thing that comes up here is budgeting as well. How much money do we have to grow our legal team, to grow our legal department? And where's that budget coming from? What does it depend upon? So these are things that if they're planned out in advance, again, when it gets down to needing to hire somebody, you're all ready to go. You've addressed some of these issues in advance. A key thing as well that comes up with regards to planning has to do with the longer term. So just not the year itself in upcoming year, but looking at 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, what kind of succession planning is there within an organization? Do you have a lot of people that are at the senior level? Are people going to start retiring soon? How is that going to be addressed? It's a key thing that should go into determining who you're going to be hiring at any given point in time. If you know you're going to be losing some senior people, the more mid-level people are going to be moving up, then maybe you need to bring more junior people on. But the reality is people are always leaving, whether they're retiring, just general attrition. People sometimes just leave for other opportunities. They stop working, they move on. So you really always should be preparing for what's coming next. And how do you make sure that the people that are on your team are actually going to help you address those needs? There is always the issue itself of actually finding and then securing new talent. So one of the things that we're able to help out with our clients is that when we know and they're planning, say in 6 months or in 8 months or in a year, for example, that they need to grow their team, and perhaps they have a certain type of a person in mind with a particular expertise or a certain level of experience. By working with us and having that planning in advance, we're able to keep our eyes open behind the scenes. So we know when candidates might be coming available, and we can keep that in mind for our clients that we know might soon be hiring for that. So the planning allows you to do that. And I think it's really, really important as far as attracting the right talent. And you want to be able to, once you find them, get them in, get them to sign that offer. Um, Another thing that comes up as part of this, and it's an issue that we're going to go into in a little bit more depth, Michelle will be talking about it after, but it has to do as well with retention. Part of your strategic planning within a legal team, within a legal department, should really be to make sure that you're keeping the people that you have. You want the good people that are there to stay. The best way to be proactive in your department is to retain the team that you already have. And one of the things that we actually see that does come up is that departures often tend to breed additional departures. So it creates additional issues, even potentially within a legal department. All of a sudden, one of the people leaves. So now other people are, oh, why did they leave? Maybe there's better opportunity out for me. Or maybe they're thinking now, oh no, they've left. I'm going to be so overworked. There's already too much work for us. And that can lead to additional people within the team starting to look around and wanting to leave your team. And as I mentioned a little bit about the succession planning, we often hear candidates who are very, very concerned about succession planning. They are unclear on what the direction of the firm is, for example, or the legal department. They see that a bunch of people are about to retire, and those are the people who bring in most of the business. So they're often worried, what's going to happen to my job if all those people leave? They don't seem to have a plan for new people coming on board. So that in of itself often ends up being a reason that more people will potentially end up leaving. So again, it gets back to planning, retaining the people that you have, and coming up with a good succession plan. An interesting concept that we see, and it's not necessarily specific to legal recruitment, just hiring in general, is something that we often see a lot of big companies doing. You'll see ads posted on LinkedIn or in other job boards, basically saying, we're always hiring good people, send in your resume, and we'll consider you for a potential role. It's not necessarily a big concept within legal recruitment, although we do see a lot more of it within the law firm environment. So we work with our law firm clients like this all the time. If we come across a great candidate, we will send them out a sketch of this person, say, hey, we've got this great person we're working with. Do you have a need? We know law firms, the main people that they hire are lawyers. So as a rule, law firms generally are always hiring lawyers. Those that are strategic know if a good person comes along, even if it wasn't on their list of things to do, or it wasn't the main intention right now, it wasn't something that they were actually planning at the moment, they know that they can use this person and they should grab them now while they're available, while they're interested, so that they have them for down the road. So that eliminates their issue with having to find the talent when they're actually really, really stuck, and when they're overworked, and when they're really busy. So we do this a lot, as I mentioned, with law firms. We don't find that as many organizations, legal departments are as open to this as a concept. The ones that we work with that, have that strategic mindset, that are always thinking, well, we need to bring people on board down the road. Those ones they're great, because we always do still send them messages when we have a good candidate, say, hey, we've got a person that fits the bill, and we know that you're always looking for someone very niche. Maybe you need someone who's got a dual background in Ontario and called to the bar in New York, and maybe you need someone who lives near the small town that you're located in, so that when we find people that actually fit those unique needs, we're able to float it by our clients, and they're able to grab people, and they are really smart about it because they know that they can grab them before they are urgently needing to have them. So what I would say is that, in summary, recruitment should be very proactive. It should never be an afterthought. It should always, always be on your mind as an organization. And another issue that comes up that has to do with this as well has to do with compensation. So I'm going to turn over to Michaela to talk a little bit about issues with compensation.
Perfect. Thank you. So a common question or concern we get from both big firms and small law firms, niche, boutiques, environments alike, is compensation. So there's sort of a few different aspects to this. There's the big firm versus the law firm, small firm. How do we compete if we're the underdog? We also see Canada versus US, and also compensation with respect to securing laterals. So just, one seven sister moving to another seven sister associate. So how do you compete when you're basically comparing apples to apples? So the concerns are different, albeit valid, and they do share similarities. And because we are entrenched in it as legal recruiters, we hear all the salaries, we hear all the perks, we hear all the bonuses, we know what all the firms are doing, and we sort of have our finger on the pulse in the market. So when you do use a recruiter, you get that added advantage that we have the intel. You might be in your own bubble and not privy to this sort of information. So that's a really good, aspect of also, just from finding, outside of finding legal talent, what intel we can provide you. Um, so with the law firms, the larger ones, although they pay more in general, they are, as most of you know, on a lockstep system. So they go up each year by a certain amount. It's pretty much, status quo across all the, large international law firms, the national, regional, very little discrepancies. And with that, so in and of itself, with just a lateral recruitment, there's ways, and we'll talk about this, how you can attract talent when, again, you're sort of comparing these apples to apples. Then with the smaller firms, their concern is, well, how do I compete with these big firms? I can never pay what they're paying. So they feel like the underdog, that they're not going to attract the same type of talent. And they feel just that they're not competitively, or they don't have that advantage in terms of the monetary compensation. When we talk about compensation, though, it's a whole package. So salary does play a large part, but you have to think of all the lawyers who don't go to big firms or aren't in it for the Bay Street name. There's people who are going into social justice, there's people going into family law, types of law that don't necessarily have the big price tag with them. So it's, we kind of tend to think, oh, we're only going to get this candidate if we pay this or if we do this. So we just have to take a step back, and think what you have to offer. So how we help with this, we can help you structure different ways, whether you're a big firm or a small firm. There's so many components to compensation that aren't necessarily monetary. The first ones that are monetary, we do see a lot of sign on bonuses. The great thing about a sign on bonus is when you think about it, it's a one off. It can be written off. It usually isn't as much as you think it is. So you think, oh, maybe 2,000, 5,000. It is amazing how far a $2,000 sign on bonus can go to somebody who's on the fence about taking a job. It really gives them sort of validation. They feel heard and understood. And the great part for the law firm is that it doesn't go to their compensation annually. So again, it's a one-shot thing. You can write it off. And when you think about it, often you're taking students for dinners or you're doing some sort of event, and that's going to be way more money than what you're going to put out for just this one getting the candidate on board. So it's kind of a cost benefit. The other types of models we're seeing is incentive based. It is harder with the larger firms, but we are seeing more of a trend to offering incentive if you bring in work or if you have referrals. And it incentivizes. Perfect. So the smaller firms, they tend to have this already built in. They give maybe a lower salary, but anything they bill and collect over a certain amount, they get a percentage they can do. And this is what we can help with, sliding scale percentages. So again, the firm isn't, putting out money for anything that they're not necessarily seeing in revenues. They get to compensate based on what's actually coming through the door. And there's different ways, again, we can help you structure whether it's generation fee. So if they bring in the client or whether they're just bringing in the client, spinning off the work to another group within the firm. So there's all different structures and younger associates are tending to really like that. And again, we're seeing it's making them work harder. They feel involved. They feel invested in the firm as opposed to just an employee. And other structures that we see, and I actually saw this years ago in London, is, Friday socials. Every Friday, they'd come around with a cart, there'd be donuts and beer, and again, very minimal in terms of how much you have to pay for this. But when they see it in the compensation package, these Friday socials or a yoga class or anything that's sort of different, that goes to the compensation package were perks that we find tend to help firms attract the talent. And this
Yeah,
also,
sorry, I
yeah.
just wanted to interject something because I see it all the time with people that I deal with, and the clients that we have. Like some of them just have really interesting little extra benefits, and it's just a couple of bucks for the firm or the company to throw out there, but it feels different when you're receiving it. One of our clients has, I don't know, it's a fitness allowance, for example, and people can do whatever they want with it, buy running shoes, take yoga classes, do a Peloton, and it's separate. It's not given to them the same way that their salary is, but it just feels like, wow, I'm getting something great out of this. So it's like a small amount, sort of big picture, but it really makes them feel great. Like it's almost appreciated more than the salary itself in some ways as being this extra little bit. And people like that. Sorry, I didn't mean to
Yeah.
cut you off, Michelle.
No, that's great. That we're seeing that too, sort of technology allowances also. And then in terms of completely non-monetary, Randy and I were discussing what we're seeing with our clients. A lot of them are offering different structures with billable hours. Like obviously in a smaller firm, there's more leeway. You're not going to be billing the same targets as you are for a large firm. And that's always been consistently something that's drawn people to the smaller firms. And it's not to say they're not going to work as hard. We don't see that. We actually see people being more, like when the targets are lower, they're actually exceeding the targets. So it's not somebody trying to skirt the issue. They're just kind of, like having that ceiling that they have to hit. It just kind of takes away from what they're actually, the work product and what they're actually doing. And this, for anyone here who's hiring in in-house capacity, A lot of times people are moving or lawyers are looking for that in-house escape because they don't have the billable hours anymore and they don't have to be on the clock and there's freedom. This is what they think, this is more of a work-life balance. We're actually seeing that there isn't more of a work-life balance. A lot of these companies are small legal teams, if not just one general counsel. They don't have the support that a firm can offer in terms of paralegals, assistance. So they often do the work that's what they may not be used to at the larger firms. On the other side, they're often able to, and this is something you can offer again as an advantage to joining if the hours aren't necessarily, that golden, uh, you know, like piece between law firm going crazy hours to now being flexible work. It's not the case, but you can also say that the compensation is often tied to the revenue of the company. So you can offer equity, you can offer shares. There's RSP matching is easier to do in an in-house environment. And so we've seen lawyers going for a much lower salary, being offered equity, and when the company's sold or when there's an acquisition or a merger, they really do well in the long term. So that's a huge piece that the salary is going to be lower if you can offer something that again isn't tied in every year, but sort of a bigger picture. And there's also long-term incentive plans, LTIPs, short-term incentive plans. So the longer, the bonus is accrued, but it's not necessarily paid out unless they stay a year. So it's a way that you can retain your talent, not have to, give too much if the company's in a down year, but you can make up that later in a long-term incentive plan. So not it's like don't always think of compensation as monetary, but rather a package. And that's what we get across to our candidates. Right away we say we put out an ad and we'll say, what's the salary? What's the bonus? And it's very hard for this is where we can step in as the middle people. We can, talk to them about all the advantages of the firm, why their culture is different from where they are now. And we can speak about the compensation piece, but without them, hanging up the phone right away because it's like, well, I'm not leaving for less. We get to explain what are the other perks, why this might make sense. We also know sort of why they're making the move, and if it is something to do with non-monetary, like less hours, or they do get this gym membership that they didn't have before that was coming out of their salary anyways. It's something that we can explain to them. And just remember, it's not a competition. Even if they're moving laterally, every firm has its own cultures, its own nuances, and there's always reasons that people are moving, and it's not just for the salary. Was there anything, Randy, you want to add to that?
Um, you know what, it'll just actually maybe move us a little bit into another whole issue that I'm sure people have been thinking about. One of the things that used to be benefit of certain organizations used to offer, and this was rare. Think back pre-pandemic. Think about how rare it was to have people working remotely. It was very, very unusual. And we did have certain candidates that we spoke to at the time, but over the years that used to love where they were at and they knew they were getting less money, but they got to work from home. So, and this was before, again, pre-pandemic. So people weren't doing the Zoom thing on a regular basis. So they got to work at home. They do phone calls, they do emails, maybe occasionally a Zoom meeting of sorts or WebEx or one of the older
Skype?
platforms. Exactly, Skype. Yeah. And so they would do that, but they loved it and it was rare, it was unique. And so it's one of the things that, if we were in pre-pandemic times right now, I would probably say, hey, had you considered offering this to your people? Could they work remotely? And knowing the legal community, the legal industry, as we do, it's very slow moving. Those sorts of things were not really considered. It just wasn't done. And it's amazing. I still think back on this and I'm so fascinated by what a pandemic can actually do for an industry. Things like Zoom and everything else obviously took off and everyone now relies on it in a way that we would have never conceived of before. The legal community, the law firms, most industries really were able to adapt to things in a pandemic world where people had to work remotely. So we went from lawyers never getting to work at home with the odd exception to everybody working at home. And I've always been, I've always believed that sort of that pendulum was going to shift back, that we're not going to stay that way. People aren't going to be working remotely all the time. Their benefits, there's no question that people appreciate the benefits of that. There's also some drawbacks as well. And I think people have recognized those over the past few years. So we're seeing a lot more of the work that was first all the way remote, going back now to definitely a lot of hybrid, and even the push to a lot of people going back on site, full-time on site. And this is becoming an issue for a lot of potential hirers because back before the pandemic, they never would have ever had to address the concept of, well, yes, I'm a good candidate. I'd love to work for you, but only if I can work at home. Now there are candidates who really have their expectations have shifted. It's been proven, it's been demonstrated that it can work. Organizations all managed to continue to work while they were remote. So a lot of people are of the mind that why should I have to go in, sit in an office when all I do all day is work on my computer and make some phone calls? I can do that at home and save myself the hour-long commute. So a lot of organizations, as I'm sure most of you are aware, have landed on a hybrid type of a model. I think it's definitely been a good thing to get people back into the office. Very few people that I speak to really are, steadfast in we need to be completely remote. People believe that it's good to be engaged with your colleagues, to be in an office, to get out of the house sometimes, to not have the distractions at home, to really get to bond. I think some of the people who were coming up as new lawyers during the start of the pandemic, they were working remotely before they ever even really met the people who they were working for. So there's the lack of getting that mentorship, the lack of developing those closer relationships, professional relationships with people that you work with, those friendships, even when you don't have that water cooler moment or the going to grab coffee, the elevator rides, like just the unplanned for times that, in a Zoom world, you don't tend to say, hey, let's have a 2-minute, how's it going chat. So I think a lot of people missed out on that. They missed out on potential development. And the reality of it is still, especially if you're talking about in a law firm environment, if you're there and the partners see you and you're a junior and they see you, they know you, you're going to have a better shot at getting the work from them than somebody who's just getting work handed to them online who they don't really get to know. So there's definitely benefits to being there. I think that most people are willing to settle in a hybrid environment. We have certain clients that, because of the nature of the work that they do, the nature of their industry, all of their people really need to be in the office. So they want all of their professionals, the legal staff, the management staff to be there as well. And for those, we do manage to address it. I think that one of the key things that I am hearing from candidates is it's not always the idea of having to be on site that is concerning to them. And they don't really want to be at home all the time or need to be at home. I think the key thing is flexibility. I think that if you're an organization that your culture is be on site, we want everyone here, and that's how you work, that's okay. But think about how can you still make that appealing to people who might not otherwise want that, or who really were only hoping to have a hybrid environment. And I think having some flexibility can really help address that. So even if you want someone to be at work full-time on site, what if you have flexible hours? What if the person's main concern is that they have a terrible commute? They're happy to go, but the 9 to 5 main rush hour hours are just killing them. What if you had those different types of hours? So you're still continuing to have your on-site environment, but people can come in at different hours. What if they know that if they get stuck with a sick kid at home or a blizzard, that the organization is still set up for people to work remotely, so they don't have to miss the day, they don't have to scramble around to deal with that. They're still able to work on site for the most part, but that flexibility is there. And there's other options as well. What about introducing a 4-day longer work week for some people and staggering that for different employees perhaps. So maybe they can be in the office Monday to Friday, longer hours. That could address
There's
potentially.
also there's one other thing we've seen summer hours before. And
Yes,
it
yes, for
which is a
sure.
really, you get out on 11 on a Friday for it's 2 months and
Yeah,
people are energized, they're excited for summer to come. They know they're gonna have that reduced work week. So that goes again, instead of cutting it off during the year, every year that they can leave at, or during the winter months that they can leave at 4, this is sort of an incentive piece too to get to that.
exactly. So
That's usually slower in the summer.
I think that there's so many ways, like even those that seem, when they're not their policy or their culture is to be on site, you can still address getting those candidates who weren't initially wanting that if they know that they have the flexibility. I have candidates who initially say to me, no, it has to be hybrid. I want to have a hybrid job, but like probably I'll be working in the office 5 days a week anyways. So the ones that say that to me, I could probably figure out a way if a client who's looking to hire is willing to be flexible, that candidate could actually be a viable candidate for them if they have a policy of flexibility. So it doesn't mean that they have to have a hybrid work policy, but a flexible one. That makes so much difference. And in this time when candidates are getting, it's been a candidate market for a number of years, the candidates are still demanding and they want what they want. And they've learned, as I said, they've learned that many places are functioning just fine having people working remotely, working on a hybrid. So when they decide that, we have candidates who won't consider anything other than that. But maybe with some flexibility, we could always get those people on board as well. So what I think is it's got to be a good balance. The organization, obviously, it needs to function. There's certain culture at certain places for a reason. So they need to be able to function, but also I think it's really, really important to keep your people happy because if your talent is happy, they are going to stay. And that just moves us right into a next topic, which Michelle's going to talk about, which is retaining your talent.
Yes, so this is huge for anyone hiring legal and otherwise, but it's retaining talent, building resilience in legal teams. So a huge concern amongst the legal profession and the law firms is this is what we're seeing. We find that the pressure of the target hours does have an effect, and it typically rears its ugly head at the mid-level. So the honeymoon phase is worn off. The lawyer's just trying to think, okay, I'm 3 to 5 years. What is my next 10 years looking like? And I'm going to stay there. The salary's good, but I know it's going up this and this every year. Partnership track is tenuous. I'm not sure if I'm going to make it. So that's when 3 to 5, we're seeing lateral moves or moving in-house. And this trend has been around for many years, but really showed up significantly around 2005, 2006 with what was known as the brain drain. So we are seeing where smart Canadian lawyers were lured abroad, first to the US and then internationally. And I saw that having worked in international recruitment for many years, we were sending lawyers like in droves over to London, Dubai, New York, everywhere. And the salaries were extremely high. The perks were unprecedented. I remember going to visit Clifford Chance, one of the largest law firms in the world in London, and walking in, and they were showing us all the floors. It looked like a gym to the nth degree. There was treadmills with TVs and like anything you could ever imagine. And then there was another floor where it was entirely gourmet restaurant that was subsidized. You could get this meal for $5. So there was just things that Canada could never compete with. And they were luring these candidates over. Then when the obviously the financial crisis hit, things shut down, people started moving back. And that's when we started to see people just crossing the street, like, oh, that firm across the street, same work, they're going to pay me $5,000 more. I'm out of here. Or I'm going to get 1 year shorter track to partnership. So this attrition, it's been around for a while. And again, we really see it at the 3 to 5 year level. Um, so not to put us out of business, but one takeaway is don't wait to use us and pay our fee when that fee could go to the talent that you already have. So the attrition at that level, that's when you got to start to think, okay, we've put all this money, we put all this effort into attracting summer students. We do these events, we do this. And then, we kind of get complacent. Well, they're here, they're not going to leave, they're going to make partner. But I think that's the time that we really law firms, organizations have to step it up because, you know, if you're going to end up losing your talent, you're going to, you know, miss out on the revenue from the work that those associates could be doing while you're searching for new ones. You're likely going to end up using a recruiter, or your internal resources are going to be taken away from something else that could be done inside the firm to finding new talent. And we usually see people are going to end up paying a lot more money trying to get somebody who may not be as good. So it's
But we
really
see
about,
that a lot of people actually, what's interesting, what happens, and it does sort of tie in with the compensation piece quite a bit actually, is that people get their, once you're in an organization, so either in the law firms where you've got that lockstep compensation, or in organizations that companies that just give annual increases of whatever, if it's a cost of living increase or they're just minor little increases. What we really see is that the time when anybody gets the largest, compensation, actual monetary compensation increase is when they move. So somebody will be with the organization and things will be great. And then they'll realize, oh, if I make a move here, I can be getting $50,000 more. And that sort of propels them up to the next level. So when we're talking about compensation, you know, it's not just how to bring people on board. Your compensation is important. It is important to keep doing salary surveys, keep seeing what the market is paying, because it's really, as Michaela was saying, you know, we're not trying to put ourselves out of business, but it really is potentially less expensive for you to just increase the compensation of your current staff than to let them go, only to have to hire someone new, pay a fee, all the onboarding expenses. But chances are the person now moving into your organization is also looking to get that bump from wherever they came from. So very likely you're going to be paying them more than you're paying the person who left anyways.
and we offer these services too. We have the consultative services with law firms and hiring managers, and you can hire us to talk about the trends in the market and just get a, you know, a bit ahead before you actually hit that, you know, attrition. Like, how are you going to not break the bank, but also make sure that your talent is staying? And it's really important that, you know, again, we see it with the summer student program, the articling student, but you've got to carry that right through to associates. And there's very easy ways. Again, it's what Randy had said, it's knowing what your competition is doing. So making sure that you're not, you know, on par, get a little bit up there. There's ways to do that. You can, even if it's a few $1,000s, you're up ahead already. But there's also like we talked about, non-monetary ways, or, you know, excellent training, having people on site, lunch and learn. You know, there's ways that they feel invested in, and also being really clear about their future prospects at the firm, and just setting it out, letting them know, is it an income partner, equity partner, what is the track? You know, they're looking around, they're thinking, oh, there's 6 associates that all at my level, will I ever make partner? And you can allay some of those concerns by just talking, say there are 6 of you, but guess what, we have, you know, we have increased our partnership spots this year. So just again, being open and making sure that the people you have on board are, you're carrying them throughout, from onboarding through to development, through associate, senior associate, right through to partnership. Um, I think Randy touched on, yeah, there's ways it can be very expensive to bring on new talent and not have it work. So invest on the front end, whether it's again sign-on bonus, recruitment agencies, then keep it going throughout the development of the lawyers' careers. And then there's also again just natural attrition. People move jurisdictions. Some people, you know, to change practice areas, and just be mindful of that too. It's not always going to come to compensation, but you have to be, that's where it comes to back full circle, that makes sure that you're ahead with your succession planning, because you are going to naturally lose, not because of money, but you are going to lose some associates for personal and various unforeseen circumstances. And one thing which leads into our next and last topic, or concern, as to why you may be having a problem with attrition or attracting talent. It may not be because of, you know, personal circumstances. It may not be because someone else is paying more. And this one, Randy will talk about, and it can be a tough pill to swallow, but we're here to help you. It's corporate reputations, the good and the bad. So I'll let Randy lead with
So
this last topic.
out of all the issues, this one is really, really interesting because all the other ones that we talked about, generally speaking, those that are doing the hiring they're aware. They know if they're having a compensation issue. They know people will tell them, oh, I can't take it. This is too low. They turn down a job. They know that they're scrambling. They're well aware of that happening when someone leaves and that they don't have the time to recruit. So all of the other issues our clients, the hire tends to know about. Reputation is interesting because very often we deal with people that have no idea that they have a bad reputation. They don't know because up until now, nobody's told them. So we find out really, really quickly from our search. Once we start looking at to fill a role for a client, whether it's a law firm, whether it's in-house, we start very quickly talking to candidates because that's what we want to do. We get as many people interested as possible. And the candidates tell us, we've heard people say all sorts of things about firms. Now, reputation can be a couple of different things. So you can be talking about, an organization having a really good reputation for certain reasons. They might be known to pay really well. They might be known to have really, really smart people, the cream of the crop, that sort of stuff. Some of them might have bad reputations that are sort of well known. Maybe they're known as a sweatshop. Maybe they're known to have a high turnover. And there's places where we can publicly see a lot of this information. There's other reputational issues that come up that aren't necessarily good or bad. They're just really more to do with your own organization's branding. An example might be if a firm has historically been known to do litigation and they've started to grow a corporate department. So we'll reach out to people and they'll hear about the firm and they'll say, oh, but I want to do corporate law. I'm not a litigator. And we'll have to address that. So there's, sort of those neutral reputational branding type issues that come up, but then there's this bad reputation piece. And that's a tricky one if you're working on hiring on your own, because you won't know why you're having a hard time attracting talent. When there's negative things going on within an organization, whether it's, in a law firm, in a particular practice group in a law firm, if it's in an organization, in a legal department or otherwise, sometimes they're known as being overworked. Sometimes there's a really challenging person to work for. There's so many different elements. Sometimes crazy things happen in the news that scare people about an organization. So we feel that no matter what it is, it can be addressed. One of the things is you can take advantage of us as being the people on the street, word on the street, it's coming to us. People tell us stuff. People tell us, I wouldn't work there. So-and-so is known to be impossible.
Can I interject for just what?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've had that in a lot of cases, and it's not on the firm on a whole. So when we're talking to the candidates and we really reach down, they had heard something about another group. So whereas if they saw your posting and they thought, okay, X firm is hiring, I am steering clear of that. When we speak to them, we distill down with them what the actual issue is, why they wouldn't even consider an interview. And they say, well, my friend's friend who worked here and worked with this partner, we say, interesting. Okay. You do know that that group is not the one you're applying for. You won't work with that person. We're again, what Randy was saying, we're there to be that middle person. We're neutral. We work as we advocate for both the client, we advocate for both the candidate, because it has to be a win-win. If a client's not happy with the person we place, it goes to our reputation. If the candidate's not happy with the place they end up, they leave. And again, it goes to our reputation. So we really want to make it be the right fit. We're not trying to fit, square peg in a round hole. So this is part of it. We can walk you through it. We can sort of tell you what the feedback is, give you strategies on how to improve, whether it's reputational, whether it's a corporate brand, and so utilize us, not just for finding the talent, but for kind of getting your firm to where you want it to be and the perception you want it to have in the market. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, that's okay. And I mean, the biggest thing is let us know, get ahead of the story. Um, Whether it's that your firm has a reputation for something that you're not happy about, or you don't know, but we're now telling you, and listen to what your recruiter's telling you. Listen to what your own staff is saying. Do surveys internally. Find out what people think of where they're working. They do this all over the place in a variety of different, companies have these sort of surveys done all the time. You can read about what people say working at different companies. Do it at law firms as well. Continue to do it within your legal department within an organization, because those are the people that are talking about you. Those on the outside, it's only hearsay. For those that work there, they know. If they're working for someone who's difficult, they know. And they might be able to say, hey, it's a great organization. So and so is difficult, but if you're not working with them, join. And even that issue of difficult, challenging bosses, there is a lid for every pot, as they say. There are people who are fantastic at working with difficult people. There are some people who actually enjoy having that sort of a rapport. We know, if you tell us, if we get the background on the organization, we get a background on what some of the issues are, be honest with us, let us know. We had a client years ago that I was doing some work for them, talking to candidates, and it got back to me from candidates that they're like, didn't that company have some major criminal investigation going on surrounding one of the people involved? And it was a whole long story. I knew nothing about it. So I called up my client and I'm like, okay, so I'm hearing some stuff. So they explained everything to me, and it was just like worlds apart from what the candidate had heard. And I said, okay, you know what? Like, I'm glad that we had the conversation, because I would like to be able to tell people and get ahead of this. And they said, absolutely, spell it out, let them know. So when I talked to people after that, I was saying, hey, this is the company. You might have read stuff about this in the news a couple of years ago. And, this is what happened. It's nothing to do with now, or this person's no longer with the company, and so forth. And they are happy to answer your questions at an interview. So if you do have any concerns, then they will be happy to address them for you. So I
Yeah.
think this is
I have
one that
something to say about that too. Yeah, I had a client notorious for being difficult to work with. So the word on the street was, and when we went through many candidates, nobody was sticking. And when we did find the person's been there for several years now, I was straight up saying this person tends to have this type of reputation. The great thing is you don't take anything personally. It's your job. If you're doing a good job, you will always know where you stand. That's what it comes down to. The person happens to be forthright. We found a person who said, that is what I want in a working environment. I don't want to be handheld. I don't want to be told I'm doing a great job if I'm not. I just need to know that this is direct. That's the approach. It's nothing personal. So again, the more honest you are with the people and the characters in your firm or organization, we can get that across and find the talent that's going to be able to, be the best fit on all levels, not just the work product, but on personality and cultural fits as well.
So I think I'm looking at the time and realizing that we have covered a lot of ground and it's taken a little bit of time. We do have some questions that people had sent us in prior to today's session, so maybe we can just try to get through a couple of those quickly. And then what we can do is we can always take any questions that you have afterwards, and we can always respond to those, or we can post something to answer some of the other questions that you might have. But let's just try quickly to get through a couple of them.
The
So
first two are important. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. So let me just, so somebody wrote in asking, saying this will be the first time that they would be working with a legal recruiter. What should I expect? And they made a comment. It looks like it's a lot of money. I could just post my own ad. Is it worth it to use a recruiter? I know that I might be a little bit biased. Yes, it's worth it. I think that hopefully what you've taken away from what we said so far is that what we're doing for you is more than just getting you a person in that role, more than just getting you that body. We are consultative, we are strategic, we have our ear to the ground in the industry. We are able to let you know what is going on out there. We know the people who are looking, and people know us. So unlike your organization, which may or may not have be well known, people aren't looking at your website to think, oh, can I get a job here? But they're looking at ours. They're looking at our social. So we have access to a ton of people that otherwise wouldn't be available to you without using our expertise. Um, Another thing that's really, really key as far as why it is helpful is that in addition to finding the talent, what we have found, especially more than ever in the past few years in this candidates market, is it is getting that talent across the finish line, getting the right person. We want the right fit there, but getting them to cross that line to accept your offer. We know the candidates tell us, I'm interviewing at 4 places. This is my first choice, but I'm getting offers coming in from somewhere else, but I really want this job. So can you move it along? We help move it along. We are able to also weed out the candidate that's just shopping, kicking the tires, that to prevent you from going through a whole big long process getting an offer and getting an offer turned away when in fact they're not even serious. Maybe they're just coming back with if they're trying to get, to get their own employer to give them a raise, so they're just trying to get a counter offer from them. We're able to identify people's motivations. So these are things that without having that intermediary, you're not necessarily able to accomplish. You won't know. And we hear a lot of clients that go through this whole process, think that they found somebody, and then all of a sudden they're at the end and the person doesn't accept the job because they've accepted somewhere else or they've decided not to move. We eliminate that from happening. We are able to make sure that anybody that's being presented in the first place has everything that you need. So and I'm just trying to I have lots more to say about it because I think that we help with so many different levels. One other thing is, again, just being your advocate. We will help with the PR. We can help if you do have a reputational issue. We can help deal with that. We can address that. If you're not well known, we can help make you well known. We act as your champion. This is such a great firm, or this is such an amazing organization, and this is why I think it would be a good fit for you. And we're able to share that with our candidates, and they trust us. And we always only want the right fit for the right organization. We do want those people to stick around, because really what we want is down the road that the candidates that we place become our clients in however many years, so that they stay where they're at and they're happy and they come back to us. So it's really in everyone's interest that the right person gets
Yeah.
placed. We want them to stay. Michelle, maybe you can answer the next question.
Sure. Which one? The what should we look for? What should you look for in a legal recruiter?
Or should I use multiple
Oh,
recruiters?
should I? That's the one. Yeah, should I use? Sorry, I was a bit.
Up to, yeah, we have a number of them. I don't think we're going to be able to get to all of them
Yeah,
today.
we'll just say, should I use multiple recruit? Because that's the other thing we get all the time. Like, oh, I'm not going exclusive with you. Why am I, I want to spread the word around. And we find that has just a negative effects. If you don't want to use one recruiter, at least do for 30 days. Give yourself a shot, give your recruiter a shot where you can, join forces. The worst thing to do is it's like, you have that one chance at a first impression. And we find that when you get out there, if you have multiple recruiters and somebody's calling an associate for the fourth time, there's just that air of desperation. Why, what's wrong? Like, why can't they find somebody? You're calling me again. What's going on with the firm? So we just think there's real power in exclusivity, and it doesn't have to be, this blanket exclusivity. You can only ever work with us. We'll do a 30-day, we'll do 45-day. But having that is priceless. It's a way that you're in full control of the search. We can streamline it for you. We give you updates. These are the people we've targeted. These are the people we haven't. This is I think we should refine the search, and we work together with you to just dig down until you get to exactly what you want. So, you give us those 10 things that you want in an associate. We try to hit 8 of those. And then you might find like, oh, you know what? Actually, I think, now that I'm meeting more candidates, I think we really need this aspect. So we brought in the parameters, or we pivot a bit. But if you have a million people doing that and you're just out there, your name's out there, again, we don't disclose the firm names. We like to, some people either are put off by the firm name, or they just want the job because of the firm name. So we want the person to be excited. We want to really ascertain whether or not it's the right fit, and not just because of a name or an association with something. So again, exclusivity works in your favor. If you streamline the search process, we can pivot as we need to. There's not too many, too many cooks in the kitchen. And it just doesn't give off that air of desperation that if somebody's getting called multiple times by many different people. And also having lawyers as your recruiter, people who walk the walk, people who've done, OCIs or actually worked in the big law firms. We know who's looking for what and what will be a good fit and where somebody may be in over their head. So just that exclusivity piece and choosing the right, you don't want somebody doing accounting necessarily for lawyers. So
And also I think it gets back to, again, so much of what the other stuff that we've been talking about. It really is about communication and developing a relationship. I think it's more challenging for a hirer, an organization, to start working with a bunch of people and actually develop relationships and work closely with people. And we work best when we're getting feedback, when we can delve into and tweak a search when we need to, and really know what you're looking for as a client, and you really learn how to work with us as a recruiter. That same relationship doesn't necessarily develop when you're farming something out to a whole bunch of people. And that might get you the body, that doesn't necessarily get you the right person, and it doesn't necessarily get them across the board, and there's the lost opportunity of other people that you might have gotten and delved into if you would have been working exclusively with just one recruiter. I think that this would be nice to segue into the next question. Michelle, you can also answer this one if you don't mind, about what you should, as a client, what you should look for in a legal recruiter, and how would we as a recruitment firm help their organization consult for their needs? Because I think that's really, really important. And I think it ties in as well with that.
yeah, and I know it's getting late, so I'll keep it brief, but there's two people in an organization that we find really important. There's obviously the person who's actually running the search, so the HR person, but they don't often know what exactly outside the job description the hiring manager or the person that the talent will be reporting into. So it's really important, even though they're so busy, whether it's, managing partner, general counsel, any partners that are going to be utilizing this associate, just to bring them into the fold, to for an initial even 20-minute conversation with the recruiter to say, these are our needs, this is what I'm looking for. We don't want to give you the wrong candidates or somebody who's not exactly on point. So having that person in the initial call instead of just the HR, obviously the HR can screen us first and make sure that it's going to be a fit and that, you know, there's going to be a sort of a connection between us and your firm. But in terms of what you're looking for substantively for that person, it's really important to have the hiring manager, and we say hiring manager, the person who the position reports into, have a say. Then once that person's done that, they hand it over to the HR, whether it's head of HR, head of talent acquisition, manager of talent, student associate, program head, whatever it is, that person can run with it. We can work with that with you, if you want the other person CC'd in it. But again, it's just important to have those two people really tied into it. So we're getting the right people. And then when we don't want to bother, the general counsel with the nitty gritty of scheduling the interviews and everything like that, that goes through the HR department. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that I think when you're looking at a legal recruiter, again, I think you want someone who's going to be honest with you. You want someone who's going to tell you what we think your needs are and who's going to make suggestions. You want someone who's going to say, listen, like, I hear what you're saying that you need. What about this? We, based on what we're seeing in the market, maybe the comp is too low, maybe the needs are too broad, maybe you can get more than you're asking for, maybe we know about the reputation. There's so many things. I think that if you really want someone to be helpful for your organization, you want somebody who can talk to honestly and openly, and you want somebody who's not going to just be flipping you resumes. That's not helpful. You're not looking for volume. That's not what we're doing. We're not in a big volume type of a business. This is a personal, get to talk to the people, get to know the people, get to learn about their career aspirations. That's the kind of relationships that we develop with our candidates. and with our clients. And that's really the best way to get the right person into an organization. So that
Just
is what you should be
one,
looking for.
yeah, one thing to
Um,
add to that, we essentially act as a de facto employee of your organization. So, we know how valuable your time is. And if we can get that 20% back in time, taking off this recruitment piece off your plate, we get in there, we do extensive screening, distill it all down to like a one page, you will know everything about this candidate as if you've sat in the room with them for 2 hours. And we do all of that for you right through to reference checks. So we just take that off your plate so you can do what you're there to do, which is either lawyering or the HR aspects of the law firm besides recruitment.
Right. Okay. I'm going to answer one last question because I feel like it has to be answered. And anything else that came in today, what we'll do is we will put some more posts up with this on our site and our social so that you can see what our answers are. But here's a question that I've heard a lot over the years. Why are you called Life After Law? And do you only support lawyers transitioning into non-traditional or quasi-legal roles? So I feel the need to answer this because it comes up, and we have an interesting name, and it's a strong name, and it has certain connotations depending on how you look at it. And as I mentioned before, when I started the company, I really was focusing on lawyers outside of traditional practice. So Life After Law, it made sense at the time. As we gradually shifted and we started to realize what was traditional and what was non-traditional, more and more things started to be incorporated into what could be your life after law. Maybe it doesn't mean life after all law. Maybe it's life after law school. Michaela knew in law school she wasn't going to practice. So what was her life after law? It was already starting right after law school. And then on the other end, it could be life after law career. Maybe you've done your 30 years in practice, and now what? It's time to do something else. How do you use those skills to build on your second career? And anything in between, life after law firm, life after law department, life after law practice. Maybe you're just switching from a life after law into a life after law in corporate law after, as opposed to being life after criminal law. So it can mean so many different things. And because of its roots and how it started, again, I mentioned our unique recruitment lens. I think that it really all began with the concept of life after law and really identifying way more than just the hard skills and experience that one sees on the resume. We look so much more into a person's background, into their motivations, and into their abilities and how they might be great within a wide variety of roles. We were the first people, we're the only people that was ever the focus of, and we're different that way from any other legal recruiters out there. So I think we'll wrap up at this point. Michelle, did you have anything else?
No, just thank everybody for joining us today. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, email,
Yeah,
LinkedIn, social. Yeah,
yeah.
we're
We're
happy to.
here to support you in navigating the complexities of legal recruitment. We can help you build robust legal teams. So if you would like some personal advice, if you want to talk about your own specific hiring needs, your own particular situations, please reach out to us. We look forward to working together. We'd love to help you transform your legal hiring strategy and achieve outstanding results for you. Thank you once again for joining us today. We look forward to connecting soon.